I always knew I wasn't the favorite. You don't need to be a genius to see it when your parents look at your older brother like he hung the stars, then turn to you like you're a burden they have to carry. Still, I kept trying. Straight A's, quiet dinners, every birthday card remembered, even when mine were forgotten. And when my father's heart attack took him down on a rainy April night, I was the only one who stayed at the hospital while Michael was out handling business. By the funeral, the pecking order was set in stone. Michael stood at the front in a black suit that probably cost more than my entire year's rent, giving a eulogy like he was accepting a Lifetime Achievement Award. Me? I stood quietly by Mom, holding her arm while she barely looked at me. Then came the reading of the will. It was held in Dad's old office, the same one I wasn't allowed in growing up. The lawyer, a man with a greasy comb-over and too much cologne, looked at me with pity before he even opened the folder. "To my beloved son, Michael," he began, "I leave the company, the house, and all financial assets." My breath caught. I blinked. Wait, all? "To my daughter, Elise," he continued without a pause, "I leave the contents of the attic box. You'll know which one." That was it. The company my father built from the ground up, the one I had interned at Summers for free, the one I helped pitch ideas to behind the scenes, was handed to Michael like a birthday gift. I didn't even look at my brother when he smirked, or when Mom placed a hand over his with a soft smile. No one looked at me. The box in question was dusty, sealed with yellowed masking tape, and sat in the farthest corner of the attic. I found it a week later, after I forced myself to stop crying. It didn't even have my name on it. Just a piece of paper taped on top with 4 letters in Dad's handwriting. Else. Was it a mistake? A cruel joke? I carried it down and opened it in my old room. Inside were envelopes. Old, some yellowing, some still sealed. A few childhood photos, a small voice recorder, and most oddly, a navy blue leather journal, the cover worn like it had been opened 1,000 times. I picked it up, flipped to the first page, and read the words in my father's unmistakable handwriting. "If you're reading this, you got nothing else. I'm sorry, but this is the truth I could never say aloud." The first few pages detailed things I never expected. His doubts about Michael's leadership, concerns over financial decisions Michael had made behind his back, things he had discovered just months before he died. There were photocopies of contracts, emails, even wire transfers, documents I didn't know Dad even had access to. One envelope had a single sheet of paper, a signed NDA with a company I'd never heard of, Tavares and Cole, marked with Michael's signature. I recognized the date. It was the same week Michael had gone to Bali with friends and come back with a new Rolex. But the real shock came in the voice recorder. It crackled as it started. My father's voice, thinner, raspier than I remembered, spoke slowly, like he was choosing each word carefully. "Elise, if you ever hear this, it means I ran out of time. I didn't want this for you, but Michael, he betrayed us. The patents, the offshore accounts, the company, he's setting it up to sell without us ever knowing. I tried to stop him, but your mother wouldn't believe me. She's always protected him. You're the only one I trust now. I need you to finish what I started." I sat in silence for nearly an hour. Then I played it again, and again. Dad had known. Everything I had suspected in quiet moments, when Michael lied through a smile or when Mom made excuses for things that didn't add up, was right here, confirmed in Dad's own voice. This wasn't just a box of memories, it was a time bomb. But the question was, what was I going to do with it? Elise didn't cry again that night. Instead, she started scanning documents. She cataloged everything into a USB drive. She Googled Tavares and Cole and found their connection to 2 recent corporate lawsuits. She even recognized one of the lawyers. By morning, she had a list of names, dates, and a single email she would draft, but not send. Not yet. She wanted to see just how far Michael had gone, and maybe, just maybe, give him the chance to fall into his own trap. The next family dinner would be interesting. Elise hadn't been to one of the Sunday dinners since the funeral. But when Michael sent the text, "Dinner at 6. Mom misses you. Don't be weird." Something in her clicked. Perfect. She pulled into the circular driveway at 5:58, parking behind Michael's new matte black Range Rover. The house, now his, still looked the same. White shutters, manicured lawn, wind chimes her mom insisted on keeping even though they annoyed the neighbors. Inside, laughter floated from the dining room. Her mother's voice rose first, light and warm. "Elise," she exclaimed as she walked in, "you look so healthy. Not beautiful, not strong. Healthy." Elise nodded politely, hugged her half-heartedly, and took a seat directly across from Michael, who poured himself a glass of red wine with the ease of a man who believed the world owed him everything. "So glad you could make it," he said, flashing a rehearsed smile. "Missed you around here." "Yeah," Elise said, stirring the ice in her water. "I figured you were too busy running the company now." He grinned. "Well, someone had to take the wheel. Dad wasn't exactly thinking straight near the end." Elise's eyes narrowed, but she said nothing. Not yet. She watched him talk, watched her mother beam at him with pride, watched the way he twisted the truth so easily into palatable stories. He had everyone fooled. Even their Aunt Cheryl, who had flown in from Texas and sat beside him like a cheerleader, kept interrupting to praise him. "Michael's doing so well," she said, buttering a roll. "Your father would be proud. It's a big burden, but he's got the shoulders for it." Elise smiled and nodded, then gently placed her napkin on her lap and pulled out a small envelope. "I brought something," she said. Michael's eyes flickered just a second. "Oh?" She handed it across the table. Inside, a photocopy of a wire transfer made 6 weeks before their father's death. From the company account to a holding firm in the Cayman Islands. Signed electronically by one M. Darrow. Michael pulled it out with lazy fingers, smirked, then laughed. "What is this?" "You tell me," Elise said softly. "It's your signature." "Jesus, Elise! What kind of conspiracy podcast have you been listening to?" Her mother leaned forward, confused. "What is that?" "A payment Michael authorized," Elise said, loud enough for the whole table to fall silent. "From Dad's company account to a shell corporation, without board approval, weeks before Dad died. I'm just wondering if you'd like to explain it to Mom." Michael's eyes were dark now, no trace of laughter. "Don't do this here." "Why not?" she asked. "This is a family dinner." After dessert, when her mother had retreated to the kitchen in tears and Aunt Cheryl made an excuse about needing to call a friend, Michael followed Elise out onto the back porch. "You think you're smart," he hissed. "You have no idea what you're playing with." "Oh, I know exactly what I'm playing with," she replied, staring out over the yard where they used to play tag as kids. "And now I know why Dad looked so tired near the end. He saw what you were becoming. He just couldn't stop you." Michael stepped closer, voice low and dangerous. "You think anyone will believe you over me? I run the company now. Everyone knows you're just bitter." Elise turned, cool and composed. "I don't need them to believe me. I have documents, audio, emails, timelines. The NDA you signed with Tavares and Cole, the offshore funneling trail, the internal audit Dad never got to finish but left notes about in his journal." He flinched. "Oh yeah," she said, stepping closer. "That's the box you gave me. Not junk, not memories. Evidence. His voice cracked, the mask slipping. "What do you want?" Elise tilted her head. "I want you to keep talking. Every word is more leverage." She walked back inside, calm and certain. Behind her, Michael stood frozen in the dark. That night, Elise drove home and uploaded everything to an encrypted cloud account. She printed multiple hard copies. One went to a safety deposit box. Another she slid into an envelope addressed to a journalist she had been following, one who had brought down 2 CEOs in the past year. But first, she needed to know just how deep the rot went. The money, yes, but the people who helped him? The lawyer? Their mother? Elise wasn't just aiming to bring Michael down. She was going to burn the whole system that protected him, and for that, she needed someone on the inside. Elise sat on her bed with the journal open, fingers tracing the ink of her father's slanted handwriting. On page 62, buried between notes about supplier contracts and potential acquisitions, was a single line underlined in bold. If anything happens to me, talk to Lydia. She knows more than she lets on. Lydia Hartwell. Elise remembered her. Dad's executive assistant for over 15 years. Always quiet, fiercely organized, and forever overlooked by Michael, who once called her a glorified calendar with legs during a Christmas party when he thought no one was listening. But Dad had trusted her. And if Lydia had stayed silent this long, there had to be a reason. Monday morning, Darrow Enterprises, HQ. Elise hadn't set foot in the building since the funeral. Now she walked through the revolving doors with her father's leather journal tucked beneath her arm like a badge. The receptionist did a double take, then offered a stiff smile. "Miss Darrow, I'm here to see Lydia. I'm expected." She wasn't, of course, but she knew the power of speaking with certainty. 10 minutes later, she was being led down the familiar glass-paneled hallway. Offices hummed with quiet tension. People she'd once known looked up and quickly looked away. Word traveled fast. Lydia was in the corner office now, smaller than her father's, but neat and dignified. She rose from her chair slowly, a thin woman in her mid-50s, with silver-streaked hair in a bun and eyes that had seen too much. "Elise," she said, surprised but not unkind. "This is unexpected." "I need to talk to you privately." Lydia closed the door, gestured to a chair. Elise didn't waste time. She placed the journal on the desk, flipped it open to the line with Lydia's name. The older woman stared at it for a long time. Then, without speaking, she walked to the mini-fridge, poured them both a glass of water, and sat. "I was wondering when you'd come," Lydia said softly. "You knew?" "I knew your father was getting suspicious and scared. He kept things from me near the end, not because he didn't trust me, but because he didn't want to drag me into what he thought might explode." "Michael?" Lydia nodded slowly. "And not just him. There are others, people your father trusted, people who switched allegiances when they saw which way the wind was blowing." "Names?" Lydia hesitated. "I can't give you all of them, not yet, but I can give you someone who might help you get them. Gregor Nash, board member. He was loyal to your father, quiet, honest. But Michael cornered him, threatened to expose some personal indiscretions if he didn't vote the way he was told." Elise leaned forward. "Do you think he'd talk to me?" "If you go quietly, and remind him that integrity still matters, even if it's a decade late." Tuesday afternoon, a corner booth in Greystone Cafe. Gregor Nash looked exactly as Elise remembered from board meetings she had quietly observed. Stooped posture, gray suit too big for his frame, hands that trembled slightly when he reached for his espresso. "You look like your father," he said, after the initial pleasantries. "I wish I had his strength." "You might have something better," he said, giving her a cautious glance. "You're not tangled in their games. Yet." Elise slid the envelope across the table. Inside, one of the internal memos from Michael's secret plan to liquidate Darrow's assets, dated and time-stamped, with a forged signature. "I have more," she said. "Emails, wire trails, audio recordings." Gregor paled. "You know if you go public, it won't just end his career. It'll burn everyone tied to him." "I'm counting on it." He looked away. "Do you think your mother knows?" Elise's jaw tensed. "I don't know anymore." Gregor took a long breath, then finally nodded. "There's a meeting next Friday," he said. "Private, off-site, no minutes. That's where Michael's finalizing the deal with Tavares and Cole. He's planning to sell the IP rights and move the headquarters offshore. It'll erase your father's legacy." "I want in," Elise said. "They'll never let you—" "I don't need permission," she interrupted, her voice ice-edged. "I need access. That's where you come in." Gregor studied her, the quiet daughter they all ignored, the one who had been written off, and now the storm they didn't see coming. That night, Elise sat at her apartment, blueprints of the company's off-site retreat center spread across her kitchen counter. She marked blind spots, exits, camera placements. She wasn't going in guns blazing, but she was going in prepared. She'd wear a wire, she'd bring the documents. She'd make them speak freely, under the illusion that no one was watching, and when the time was right, the truth would come out in full view. For her father, for herself, and for every decent person who was used and discarded by people like Michael. The clouds rolled in fast over the Pinecrest Hills. A cold front. Fitting, Elise thought, as she drove up the narrow, winding road toward the Darrow Enterprises' private retreat, an opulent, estate-turned boardroom nestled on a forested cliffside. Her father had once brought her here when she was 15, showing her the cedar-paneled main lodge and whispering that one day it would be hers too. He was wrong, for now. Inside her coat pocket was a tiny recorder, pinned to the inside of her lapel. It was voice-activated, encrypted, and silent. Around her neck, layered under a silk scarf, was a second device, a hidden mic synced to a secure app Gregor's contact had helped her set up. If anything went sideways, all she had to do was tap her bracelet twice. Her laptop back home, hardwired to the system, would start uploading the live stream to 4 separate cloud accounts. She wasn't just playing detective anymore. This was war. Friday, 3:12 p.m. Elise arrived at the side entrance of the estate, escorted in through a narrow utility hall by Gregor Nash, who had sworn up and down he hadn't slept in days. "You sure about this?" he whispered. Elise nodded, tying her hair into a neat bun. She wore a tailored navy suit, simple heels, and no makeup. Her face clean, honest, unremarkable. The kind of look that let her slip past attention, especially in a room where men like Michael like to hear their own voices over everything else. "They won't recognize me," she said, "and if they do, I'll make sure they regret it." They stepped into the hallway leading to the main conference room. Gregor paused, then handed her a folder. "They're voting today. You'll want to hear what comes before it." She took it. Inside were the minutes from the last closed-door session. Michael had made promises, to investors, to shell corporations, even to 2 foreign entities. He was weeks away from liquefying the company and cashing out, all without a whisper to the rest of the family or employees. Elise stared at her brother's signature, scrawled across the final page, and felt something inside her settle into steel. This wasn't about a will anymore. This was about erasure. The conference room smelled of cedar oil and quiet corruption. Thick leather chairs circled a live-edge walnut table. Michael stood at the head, in full corporate kingpin mode. Black button-down, no tie, Rolex flashing as he gestured through a slideshow projected behind him. Elise stayed in the back, out of his sightline, clipboard in hand, pretending to be a late intern or note-taker. No one paid attention. They were too busy nodding. "This deal with Tavares and Cole positions us for global acquisition," Michael said, voice crisp. "We're projecting a 240% return over 5 years. And with the offshoring, we cut down tax exposure by 42%. That's legacy-level restructuring." "Legacy for who?" Gregor said quietly from the far end of the table. Michael smiled, lips tight. "For the Darrow name, of course." But Elise caught it, the flicker in his eye. He saw Gregor's resistance. He didn't like it. And Michael was never good with people he couldn't control. He moved to the final slide. "So, shall we vote?" That's when Elise moved. She stepped forward and placed a thick envelope on the table in front of Michael. "Before you do," she said, calm and loud, "you might want to see this." The room stilled. Michael looked up, blinked, and for the first time in years, faltered. "Elise?" She nodded once. "Nice to see you too." "What the hell are you doing here?" "Stopping you." Michael scoffed, but the tension was instant. "You don't have authority here." "I have something better." She turned to the board. "Truth." She opened the envelope. One by one, she laid out evidence. The forged contracts, the wire transfers, the audio transcript of her father's last words. Then, she reached into her coat and took out the flash drive. "This contains the full recorded meeting from the last Tavares and Cole negotiation. You claimed the board approved it. You claimed transparency. But the only thing you've been transparent about, she turned to the projection screen, is how desperately you wanted this company to become yours. Gasps, shuffling, a silence that felt like a blade being drawn. One woman near the middle, a finance VP Elise recognized as Mrs. Hernandez, stood up. "Michael," she said, voice shaking, "is this true?" He laughed nervously, but there was no charm now, no polished deflection. "It's fake. She's unstable. She's angry she got left out." Elise's voice was steady. "Maybe, but the SEC won't think so. And neither will the press. And neither will the rest of this board when I send this to the whistleblower hotline your own compliance department funds." She picked up the flash drive and offered it to Mrs. Hernandez. "Or," she added, "you can hear it for yourself." Michael's face drained of color. He lunged forward to snatch the drive, but Gregor stepped between them. "Don't," Gregor warned. "Not in front of witnesses." Witnesses. That was the word Michael hated most. Hours later, Elise's apartment. Elise sat on her couch, exhausted but electric. The board had called an emergency vote. Michael was suspended pending internal investigation. An external audit was already on its way. And the press? Gregor had leaked just enough to a friendly contact at the Financial View to ensure headlines would start appearing by Monday. Her inbox was flooded. Half her family hadn't called. The other half had called too much. One message, though, stood out. From Lydia Hartwell. Subject: "Your father would be proud. Body." "They're afraid of you now." "Good, or we're just getting started." Rain lashed against Elise's windows the next morning, the kind of storm that drowned out everything but your own thoughts. She sat at the kitchen table in a robe, untouched coffee growing cold beside her laptop. The news had broken overnight. Darrow Air under investigation for fraudulent dealings, family legacy at risk. There was no mention of her yet. Just Michael, and a vague reference to an unnamed internal whistleblower. It was perfect. Until her phone rang. She didn't recognize the number, but something in her chest clenched before she even answered. "Elise," her mother's voice came through, tight and shaking. "What have you done?" Elise closed her eyes, pain threading through her temples. "I exposed the truth," she said carefully. "What Michael did to Dad. What he was about to do to the company." Her mother's voice dropped to a brittle whisper. "You ruined your brother." She laughed once, humorless. He ruined himself. "I just gave the world a front row seat." But her mother wasn't listening. She was crying now. Quiet, strangled sobs that pulled Elise back in time. She remembered that sound after Dad's first heart scare, after the call from the police when her grandmother died. It always sounded more like guilt than grief. "You always wanted to divide this family," her mother finally spat. "Ever since you were little, jealous, cold, you never forgave us for loving him more." There it was, the confession Elise never wanted but always knew. A silence bloomed between them, dense and impossible. "You should have gotten the box," Elise said, voice raw. "Then maybe you would have known what he was planning, what he left behind." Her mother scoffed. "He left you the junk because he knew that's all you could handle. You're not a leader, Elise. You're just angry." The call ended with a click. Elise didn't cry. Not this time. Instead, she opened her father's journal to the last page, one she hadn't dared to touch until now. Folded into the back cover was a second envelope. No name, no label. Inside, she found a small silver key and a note in her father's familiar script. "Locker 117, Franklin and Maynard Storage. If they come after you, this is the last card left to play." Her breath hitched. If they come after you? Was he expecting this? Saturday, 6:42 p.m., Franklin and Maynard Storage. The facility was a gray monolith behind a chain-link fence and a dying auto shop. Elise pulled in just before sunset, rain still misting over her windshield. The air smelled like damp concrete and secrets. A clerk behind bulletproof glass buzzed her in with barely a glance. Locker 117 was in the far corridor, floor-to-ceiling metal doors lined in endless rows. She turned the key and slid the lock open. Inside was a fireproof safe, and beside it, a faded manila folder with her name written in ink. She opened the folder first. Bank statements, offshore transfers. But these weren't Michael's. These were her mother's. Tens of thousands routed quietly from corporate accounts, small enough to avoid detection, frequent enough to raise red flags for anyone looking closely. Most were marked as consulting fees or miscellaneous expenditures. The trail stretched back years, even before Michael had started his scheming. At the bottom of the folder was a photo, a black and white security still. It showed her mother, elegant in a silk blouse, shaking hands with one of the lawyers from Tavares and Cole. The timestamp? 2 months before her father's death. Elise's hands shook. She staggered back, chest caving in under the weight of a truth that felt worse than any lie. Her mother hadn't been naive. She hadn't been manipulated. She was in on it. And all this time, while Elise was begging for scraps of attention, begging to be seen, loved, included, her mother had been laundering loyalty for Michael behind closed doors. The safe took 15 minutes to crack open with the key and code her father scribbled on the back of a receipt taped to the inside of the folder. Inside was a hard drive, a thick one, heavy, old-fashioned. She connected it to her laptop right there on the floor. Folders opened one by one. Board corruption audio. Michael, bribe evidence. Tax fraud / Tavares structuring. Testament 2. Truth statement. Her heart stopped. The last folder was a video file. She double-clicked. Her father's face appeared, tired, pale, recorded in his office, early morning sunlight spilling over the bookshelf behind him. He looked directly into the camera. If you're watching this, then Elise found what I needed her to find, and that means the people I trusted most turned on me, including my wife. Elise covered her mouth with her hand. I don't know if I'll make it to fix this. But I know you, Elise. You were always the one who noticed the details, who stayed quiet but saw everything. I'm sorry I didn't give you more in life, but I'm giving you everything now. You're the only one who can make it right. She watched the full video twice. Then she copied it onto a flash drive and tucked the original hard drive back in the safe. She locked it. Then she walked out into the rain, head bowed but spine straighter than it had been in weeks. She didn't just have evidence against Michael now. She had proof of their mother's betrayal. And in 24 hours, the company's board would hold an emergency shareholders meeting, public, documented, and now vulnerable. It was time to burn it all down. The Darrow Enterprises auditorium had never been this full. Cameras buzzed. Shareholders murmured in low, worried voices. Employees filled the back rows with tense eyes and folded arms. For years, Darrow had been a symbol of strength, innovation, family legacy. But after last night's leak, anonymous but scathing, it was now a brand hanging on by a thread, and Elise was the one holding the scissors. At precisely 9 a.m., the stage lights clicked on. Michael strode out first, shoulders broad, jaw set, every inch the man who still believed he was in control. His smile was robotic. His eyes scanned the crowd like a general walking a battlefield he hadn't yet realized he'd lost. He tapped the mic once. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming. I know the last 24 hours have brought a flurry of misinformation and doctored media. The only thing doctored, came a calm voice from stage left, is your memory of the truth. Elise stepped into the light. The crowd shifted. Michael flinched. She wore black, a simple blazer, hair tied back, minimal makeup, and no jewelry except her father's old silver watch on her wrist. A visual contrast to Michael's glossy confidence. She looked serious, steady, lethal. A silence spread through the room, so thick it felt like breathing in fog. Michael's jaw tensed. Elise, this isn't your place. No, she said, walking up to the second podium. But it was supposed to be. She turned to the crowd. I'm Elise Darrow, daughter of Thomas Darrow, the man whose name is on every building, every contract, every innovation this company ever produced. And I'm here because I refuse to let that legacy be rewritten by fraud, greed, and betrayal. Someone clapped, then another, then silence again. She reached into her bag and pulled out the flash drive. This contains audio recordings, financial records, and video testimony from my father, documents proving my brother's illegal financial activities, his attempt to offload this company to a foreign entity, and the coordinated deception of this board. Michael scoffed, stepping forward. There's no proof those files are real. There's also this, Elise said. She turned toward the projection screen. The lights dimmed. Click. Her father's face filled the screen. The auditorium went still. If you're watching this, then Elise found what I needed her to find, and that means the people I trusted most turned on me, including my wife. Gasps echoed. Michael staggered back half a step, blinking hard. Michael has siphoned money from the company's R&D accounts. He has laundered those funds through a firm known as Tavares & Cole and signed falsified contracts under proxy companies. If this isn't stopped, Darrow Enterprises will cease to belong to this family. And Elise, she's the only one who can stop it. The video ended. The silence that followed wasn't quiet. It roared. Michael opened his mouth, then shut it again. Sweat gleamed at his temple. From the second row, a voice barked out, "Is this why my division was cut last year? Where's our money gone? Why did you deny us bonuses? Did the board know?" Michael stepped forward. "This is an ambush. It's emotional manipulation. She's grieving. She's confused." "No," Elise said calmly. "I'm finally done being confused." She turned again toward the board members seated to the right of the stage. Her gaze locked on each of them. "Your silence made this possible," she said. "But today, silence is complicity. The shareholders have seen the proof, and under Section 6 of the Darrow Charter, you can no longer operate without a full investigation." Then, with steady fingers, Elise slid a document forward on the presentation screen. A motion of no confidence, signed by 5 shareholders, including Gregor Nash and Mrs. Hernandez. "Effective immediately," she said. "I'm demanding a vote for Michael Darrow's removal." The room erupted into arguments, cell phones, side conversations, and rising panic. Michael's voice thundered, but no one was listening. Security appeared at the back. A lawyer in a pinstripe suit stepped forward with a clipboard. A woman with a press badge live-streamed from her phone. Michael's empire cracked in real time, and Elise stood in the eye of the storm. After 20 minutes of deliberation, the lead counsel returned to the microphone. "We have conducted a preliminary review of the evidence," he said, his voice heavy with formality. "The board will honor the motion. Effective immediately, Michael Darrow is suspended pending federal review and internal audit. All decisions made under his tenure will be placed under freeze." Michael shouted something. No one heard him, because everyone was looking at Elise. After the meeting, 2:42 p.m., Elise sat alone in her father's old office. For the first time, the space felt still, not cold, not haunted, just waiting. A knock came. She didn't turn. "It's open." Lydia Hartwell stepped inside, holding a folded envelope. "From your mother," she said softly. "She didn't have the nerve to hand it to you herself." Elise took it without a word. She didn't open it. Lydia hesitated. "They'll come for you next." "I know." "You made enemies today." "I made history." Lydia smiled, but her eyes were wet. "He would have been proud, Elise. He knew what you were. He just couldn't protect you from the people closest to him." "I know," Elise whispered. She waited until Lydia left. Then she finally opened her mother's envelope. It was just one photo. Elise as a baby in her mother's lap. And on the back, in her mother's handwriting, "I chose wrong. I'm sorry, but I'm still too weak to say it out loud. You were the only one who saw what we all refused to. Make something better with what's left." 1 week since Elise's name hit headlines, since Michael was escorted out of the company in a black Escalade with 2 federal agents and no applause, since the boardroom transformed from a lion's den to a reconstruction site. But victory wasn't quiet. It was loud, messy, full of whispers. Tuesday, 10:12 a.m. Darrow Enterprises, executive floor. Elise's new office smelled of lemon oil and obligation. Her father's name still lined the glass doors, But the plaques inside had been switched. Interim Strategy Chair, Elise Darrow. Her inbox overflowed. News requests, legal threats, employee appeals, anonymous tips, board power plays, and beneath it all, a cold current she couldn't ignore. Michael had vanished. The audit team confirmed a dozen trails he left behind: fraudulent vendor contracts, inflated invoices, secret bonuses. But there was a problem. The real money? It wasn't where it should be. Funds had been drained days before Elise went public. Someone tipped him off early. There were whispers about a leak, maybe even a spy still inside. A knock on her door snapped her out of her thoughts. Lydia entered with two things: a fresh copy of the Financial View and a look of concern. "You need to see this." Elise took the magazine. Her brother's smug face smirked from the cover, taken years ago before the cracks had shown. But it was the headline that made her stomach twist. "Michael Darrow speaks. Sister staged corporate coup over jealousy, says former CEO." She flipped to the article, heart pounding. He claimed she manipulated the board, that she fabricated evidence, that their father suffered from late-stage paranoia, diagnosed but hidden by Elise, and that she used it to forge documents and rally bitter shareholders. The piece was slick, slippery, full of strategic alleged and sources close to the family, but it wasn't just a hit piece. It was a declaration of war. Elise stood in the middle of her office, hands trembling. "He's trying to rewrite the narrative," she whispered. Lydia nodded. "He's out of the building, but not out of power." Then she added something Elise didn't expect. "And he's not working alone." Later, that night, 9:03 p.m., Elise's apartment. The city stretched out below her, glittering with promises and lies. She paced in front of the window, voice recorder in one hand, the hard drive in the other. Her phone buzzed. Blocked number. She answered. No words. Just breathe. Then a voice she hadn't heard in days. "Still think you're safe, little sister?" Elise froze. Michael's voice dripped like poison. "You don't know what Dad was into. You think I'm the villain? You're cleaning up a mess that goes deeper than either of us." Her throat tightened. "You stole from him. You betrayed us. That's the truth." Michael chuckled darkly. "No, Elise. The truth is, you stepped into a room filled with ghosts and thought they'd let you walk out clean." Then, click. Elise didn't sleep that night. Instead, she reopened the hard drive, the one her father left in the storage locker. She clicked into a folder she hadn't touched yet. Contacts encrypted. It required a password. She tried birthdays, anniversaries, her name. Nothing worked. Then she remembered a line from the video. "You were always the one who saw everything." She typed it in. Access granted. The folder opened to a spreadsheet of names. Dozens. Investors, political consultants, foreign advisors. One stood out. Nathan Cole, Tavares and Cole, 2007 to 2019. Codename Redivory. She stared. Michael hadn't created the corruption. He'd inherited it. Her father had built something powerful, yes, but it was never clean. Elise felt her skin go cold. What had she really just taken control of? The next morning, Darrow HQ. When Elise stepped off the elevator, the air felt different, heavy. Lydia met her halfway. "We have a problem," she whispered. "What now?" Lydia handed her a sealed envelope delivered by courier, marked confidential. Inside, a cease and desist from Tavares and Cole. They accused Elise of slander, corporate espionage, and unlawful possession of private materials. But it was the last line that chilled her. "Return all Darrow-held communications and files relating to Redivory, or we escalate to federal litigation." Elise sank into her chair. She was no longer fighting for a company. She was in the middle of something much older, much darker, and far more dangerous than Michael ever was. The rain was back. It always came when the truth did. Elise sat alone in her father's former study, now hers, staring down at the open hard drive and the cease and desist letter from Tavares and Cole. The fire crackled in the hearth, but she felt no warmth, just clarity, cold, cutting clarity. Her father hadn't been just a visionary, he'd been complicit. And now she had inherited more than a company. She had inherited every buried deal, every off-the-record favor, every silent nod passed between men who believed power made them untouchable. Michael hadn't been the storm. He was just the first crack in the dam. 2 days later, 4:18 p.m., a parking garage in Midtown. Elise met her contact on level 4, where the security cameras had mysteriously malfunctioned for the third day in a row. The man was tall, lean, with streaks of gray at his temples and tired eyes that had clearly seen too much. His name was Isaac Sloan, a federal investigator who'd been after Tavares and Cole for over 7 years. "You came," he said. "I read your file. You've been ignored, silenced." "I believe you," Elise said. He studied her. "Most people get scared before this point. Run. Take the payout." "I'm not most people." He nodded once. "Then let's end this." She handed him a flash drive containing everything: red ivory documents, Michael's audio, corporate funneling records, even a statement she recorded herself explaining how it all unfolded. If anything happened to her, it would go to 3 major outlets. Elise wasn't just blowing the whistle. She was pulling the whole foundation apart. The fallout came fast. Tavares and Cole's name leaked into the news cycle alongside the Red Ivory Project, a covert operation using American corporations to funnel political funds and international bribes through fake patents and consulting fees. Multiple executives resigned. A judge froze their assets. The media called it the dirtiest open secret in corporate law. And Elise Darrow? She walked straight through it. She testified before a federal subcommittee with a calm voice and bulletproof documents. She turned over her father's network to an independent investigation unit, and when the board begged her to stay on permanently, she declined. 1 month later, somewhere quiet, North Coast. The house Elise bought was nothing like the mansion she'd grown up in. It was modest, tucked between trees and ocean cliffs, with soft rugs and warm light and the kind of silence you could breathe in. She sat on the porch, wrapped in a knit sweater, watching the tide roll in. The headlines had quieted. The world had moved on. But Elise hadn't forgotten. Her mother never reached out again. Michael was still awaiting trial, though his lawyers were doing everything to delay it. Occasionally, she still got threats, veiled, legal, anonymous, but she wasn't afraid. She had nothing left to hide. The past had already burned. And from the ashes, she built herself. Inside, on a shelf beside her father's old watch, sat a photo of them both. Elise was maybe 6, seated on his lap, looking away from the camera with a small frown. He'd scribbled something on the back years ago. "You see things others don't. Never stop." She hadn't. She wouldn't. And now, finally, she didn't have to.